Ladies and gentlemen, our next session is on enhancing pharmacovigilance, navigating compliance and value for future. We have with us Mr. Avinash Kakade, Global Head of Pharmacovigilance at Dr. Reddy's Laboratories, and he will be sharing his expertise here with us this afternoon. So, can we have a big round of applause for him and welcome him on stage? Yes? Thank you. A very warm welcome to you, sir.
Yes, so let's start, guys. Good afternoon. Let me start off with a question. How many of you feel that we should have a parallel career while we work in the pharma industry? Oh, I see a couple of hands raising. This question assumes importance for instances like this when you have a session after lunch. Now, I was wondering while I was sitting there that I could be a tea vendor as well in parallel, so I could serve teas and then keep you awake. But I think this physiotherapy trick is also a good one. So while this pops up, let me start. Is this going to work? The slide? Okay. Okay, so let me start off thanking IPA, Series G, Dr. Rajiv Desai sir, my boss in DRL, Krishna Venkatesh sir here for approving my participation here. But last and not the least, the most unsung and the unknown one, the patient, for which we do all that we do wholeheartedly and tirelessly. Am I audible correctly? Okay. So let's start off thanking the patient as well. And let's see what pharmacovigilance does. And this is the agenda. I'll quickly skip this slide. So let me take you through a story here. Imagine we driving on this beautiful scenic road at a speed of 120 plus kilometer per hour. And then we are unknown what lies ahead. We are enjoying the ride. We are talking with our co-passengers. And we are enjoying the ride. Little do we know that, few miles down the road is ridden with potholes. Worse potholes than what even Mumbai has. Now, imagine if one of your co-passengers was a pregnant lady who is nearing her due date of delivery. How difficult that ride would be. Either you would damage the car that you are in, or the passengers would be hurt if we were not aware that there are potholes in the road ahead. And now imagine another scenario where you have a sign which says danger ahead, pothole for miles. It doesn't describe how many miles, but it at least warns us that there are potholes ahead. There are potholes ahead. So this is what exactly pharmacovigilance does. So this is the good part where during clinical trials we have a strict inclusion-exclusion criteria. We do monitor A's and SA's during the clinical trial. But once the product is thrown open in the market after approval, this is all that we see. A lot of concomitant medications coming in, lot of concomitant conditions coming in, some restrictions, special population use like in pregnancy or geriatric or pediatric age group is exposed to the population. So that's where the post-marketing pharmacovigilance comes in picture, where depending on what kind the risk is, you have a warning or a precaution set up in the label, as well as you restrict the use in special population. So that is all what pharmacovigilance does. This is a standard definition as per the WHO. It is a science and activity relating to the detection, assessment, understanding and prevention of adverse effects But what I want to emphasize here, it is the throughout the life cycle and not just after the approval is done. It also encompasses herbals, traditionals, and complementary medicines. But what I want to highlight here, the second sentence here, biologics, vaccines, medical devices, and digital therapeutics. We'll see in the ensuing slides how the world is changing when it comes to treatment modalities and how pharmacovigilance is trying to gear up. Also, it includes lack of efficacy, counterfeit, off-label, misuse, abuse, and all other special scenarios. And it is not just prevention, but also a mitigation and minimization. So basically, to summarize, pharmacovigilance is a complex interlinked subject which requires basically two things: adequate expertise and technologies. And nowadays, both are playing, equal important role in the field of pharmacovigilance. So this is the history of pharmacovigilance. I'm sure it is very difficult to read from the hall there, but typically in 1848 is where in 1848 was the first someone who observed deaths caused by chloroform. And since then, over a period of 175 years, this science has evolved in a structured way. The key things being the FDA Act coming into picture in 1938, European legislation in 1965, not to forget the thalidomide tragedy in 60s, early 60s, and then EMA being set up in 1995. I don't know, this is not working, I don't know. And then in 2012, the latest guidelines on good vigilance practices by European Union. So this is 175 years young fraternity, and we are still evolving, I would say. Now this is where you have to decide as a PV professional which path to go. Is the benefit exceeding the risk, or is it the other way around? And that's where we strive to improve patient care and safety, and thus improve public health at large, contribute to the assessment of benefit, harm, effectiveness, and risk, encourage the safe, rational, and more effective use. And at the crux of all this is the effective communication, because no matter if we do all that we do, but we do not communicate back to the agencies and to the public at large, all that we do goes down the drain. And the last bullet is something that we still are very poor at, where we have to make some conscious efforts to increase the awareness of pharmacovigilance as a fraternity, as a field, in the undergraduate and the postgraduate curriculum in our universities. So these are just few snapshots of which drugs were withdrawn over the last few years. This is almost like going back to last 50, 60 years. What I want to highlight here is the latest one, not the latest one really, but Rantac, which was ranitidine, and the issue, nitrosamine issue, is still lingering on for not just for ranitidine, but for other products as well. One thing that I want to highlight here is sibutramine. Sibutramine was used very aggressively for weight loss in the late 2000s. And now we have GLP-1 agonists that are being promoted for weight loss. But this product at that point of time was recalled or withdrawn for risk of increased heart attack and stroke. And this example of canagliflozin shows us that PV is not only about withdrawal or recalls. This is one example, very live example. This is from the FDA podcast, where one of the warnings was revoked because of some new findings. So PV helps both ways. It increases the benefit while reducing the risk as well. Now, who are the stakeholders here? Regulatory authority goes without saying. Then we have the pharmaceutical manufacturers, the license owners, and the distributors. We have healthcare professionals. We have, this is increasingly becoming important these days, the media and the legal angle of what we do. And at the center is the smiling patient. So all that we do, the four parties, ensures that the patient is safe. Basically, each one of us who is present here, our lives are somehow touched by medical intervention. So we cannot restrict the scope of pharmacovigilance stakeholders to just these 3 or 4 parties. This slide talks about the impact of ADRs. So if it was an inpatient, the cost of an preventable ADR would be somewhere around the numbers mentioned here, close to, on an average, around 5,000 pounds. And the hospital stay would have been prolonged by around 7 to 8 days on an average. Vis-a-vis, if you get an ADR as an outpatient, the cost is relatively low as compared to the inpatient, but if in case the patient needs admission, the hospital stay is prolonged. I have the references from where I have picked it up. Those will be available. ADRs were the fourth topmost cause of death. So way back in 1998 or something. But in 2023, fortunately for all of us, this is not in the top 10. So this demonstrates that whatever we are doing as an industry, is paying effort. So it's paying in long run. The median rate for individuals more than 65 years is 10%. Fatal ADRs represent only 1.34%, and this is a huge number, though it looks like 1.34%, but this absolute number would be too big a number. The top 3 class, anti-neoplastic, immunomodulating drugs, neurological drugs, and cardiovascular. And the top 3 individual drugs for which there were fatal ADRs, denosumab, lenalidomide, and thalidomide. Thalidomide is no longer used. This is the big challenge. The last bullet is the big challenge for a country like India as well as worldwide. But when you compare individual countries, I think India fares very, very poor in the terms of absolute numbers or percentage of reporting ADRs. To be very candid, in my whole professional life, I may not have reported a single adverse event. And that's how the pathetic state of the spontaneous reporting is. I'm not sure how many of you have reported AEs to the pharmaceutical company if you have seen a adverse event happening to you or to your friends or relatives. And that's where we have to take acute measures to increase the awareness of a common man to report adverse events. The doctors, the pharmacists have to report. Now, through the PV centers, the regional PV centers, the agency has done some good measures, but outside of those regional PV centers, the reporting rate is very, very, very low. And these are the references for the data in this slide. So I just, for the sake of presenting, some data from FAERS. FAERS is the US FDA's reporting system, where if you see how the number of reports have increased over years, you see in the last decade, the number has gone significantly up. I do not have an answer why it dipped in 2023. The data is still evolving, but the number has gone up. And this data comprises of all the data that we report to FDA, either domestic cases or international cases. I just pulled out the list of adverse events, or the system organ class as we call, just for lenalidomide. So almost one-third of the adverse events belong to general disorders and administration side, and this is something not a right place to go into depths of what lies in which, but this is just a sample I wanted to show that FAERS, the US FDA, has a very structured way of publishing the data. It is all about us, how we use the data to our advantage. Now, why PV still matters? One of the integration between PV and quality is about the health hazard assessments. The outcome or the conclusion of the health hazard assessment report decides the class of recall depending on how the conclusion is, whether it could lead to could damage patient safety, it might or it unlikely. So that would determine how the level of recall would be, the class of recall. One area where we are still growing as an industry is involving pharmacovigilance department in the due diligence activities. Most of the companies are doing it, but it could be still, there is a scope that it could be still done in a better way when the product is selected. Ongoing signal detection is the real meat, I would say, the real pinnacle of all that a pharmacovigilance department does, and signals arise not only from the cases that you have in the database. It comes from multiple sources. It could be a single case that could turn out to be a signal, or it could be a case series or literature data. What is missing is patient engagement. So all the MRPs, the market research programs, the patient support programs, there the patient engagement happens, but the involvement of PV team will significantly play a good role when it comes to those studies. These are the two slides, this slide and the next one. I am just giving you a very bird's eye view of what, like we have the US FDA data, I have the MHRA findings. So this is published annually, every year. For last 1 year, the number of inspections that the MHRA did, they come up with the findings. So if you see, the worth noting what I wanted to highlight here, this green is the number of inspections that they did every year vis-a-vis the number of days for each inspection. So if you see, the number of inspections have tanked down, and this could be because of the COVID time, but still post-COVID also it has not reached pre-COVID state. But significantly, the number of days per inspection has gone up. So earlier it was many inspections, but for each inspection the number of days were less. So what do we derive from here? A person like me, I would say, whenever MHRA inspects, they spend a lot of time. That means they do a very thorough evaluation of the PV system. These are the various findings. I would skip it in the interest of time. I see the clock ticking there. Now, these are the findings that are very, very common and very easy to control. Inadequate additional risk minimization implementation, incomplete or inaccurate signal management, deviation kappa management. The fourth one is something very, very common, but we still get it. I have seen many companies getting it: delay in providing documents during inspections. Lack of oversight on MRPs, PSPs, delay in filing safety variations. Another table of few examples of what went wrong with the product. Let me skip it. Let's focus on what lies ahead. Patient engagement, informed decision making, changing landscape. So now here we see a lot of new modalities coming in. Translational science, precision medicine, digital therapeutics, CAR-T and others. So this is from one of the BCG reports. Here we see the 41% is the new modalities that was projected in 2019, which has gone to 56 in 2023 pipeline. So this is the increase in the absolute new modalities. And how will PV take care of this? I think there is one more slide here. And these are the various options, like you have all the MABs, you have stem cell, CAR-T therapy, you have mRNA vaccine that we had for COVID. So these are the new modalities. Now, how these new modalities affect the function of a pharmacovigilance team? All these are personalized medicines. The patient population is very small. So detecting rare adverse events, will be very difficult. And that's why in Jan 2024, FDA mandated a black box warning for all the CAR T cell therapies, where they wanted to highlight that the occurrence of a T cell malignancy is very, very, very known. So all this mandate, especially for CAR T, what I have seen, FDA is now mandating a 15-year study, follow-up study. So even if the patient is done with the therapy, for next 15 years, they want the pharmaceutical company to have a 15-year follow-up protocol to detect such adverse events which may come into picture later in the life after stopping such therapies. So this is where PV as a function has to gear up on changing their ways of working. Usually for the established medicines, we do not have a follow-up. A follow-up is done for 2 or 3 times and at the max till the outcome of the pregnancy. But when we start working on such modalities, then the long-term follow-up should be planned. And then real-world evidence is very rarely used in PV these days. But these studies will help in the rare adverse events, because the rare adverse events are really rare and cannot be detected so easily. I think this was the last slide. Eco-pharmacovigilance, the way when we dispose of, as a manufacturing plant disposes of medicines in the soil, in the environment. So there is a different subject by name eco-pharmacovigilance. And this is the hype now. So artificial intelligence, machine learning, automation, and a lot can be done in PV on this. The SIOM's working group 14, I think their report will be published by 2027. They are still working on how we could have AI in PV. All these are various sub-steps which could be really done in a better way, in a time-efficient, cost-efficient way. AE detection, triage, literature review, reporting, and signal detection. Basically, what is the need of the time is to have a collaboration between regulatory agencies and the pharmaceutical companies to establish standard guidelines. I don't recall any company was inspected by MHR or FDA on the AI usage. So what is our duty? To create awareness, change the attitude or perception towards benefit and risk assessment, take a more proactive approach in PV, and let's see PV more of a science and less of a compliance, not at the cost of non-compliance, but it is more of a science as well. And then this is the motto, right? This is the base of all that we do: communicate, communicate, and communicate. I like to call out this quote by James: medicine, the only profession that labors continuously to destroy the reason for its existence. And that applies to everyone, each one of us here. We are trying to bring in medicines to control the diseases, but hypothetically, if a disease, no disease ever existed, what all of us would do. I think this is the last slide. Thank you. Yes?
All right, ladies and gentlemen, the floor is now open to ask any questions you'd like to Avinash. And yes, a gentleman is standing right at the back. Can you please give the mic there? Yeah. My mic switch on.
Warm welcome, sir.
So may I request you to state your name and organization?
My name is Anand from Arvindo Pharma. Sir, thanks for elaborating the concept. But I want to understand from you, this pharmacovigilance, don't you think it's far away from the common man? Say, for example, Now I am suffering from acidity and I have taken a tablet, antacid. Now I got my foot burning sensation. So is this an ADR? Means in terms of a very layman concept. See, every day we visit hospital, we go to pharmacy, daily basis we take medicines. This concomitant effect is everywhere is observed, but it is not reported. Whatever the data is projected, it's clearly very alarming. But in a better understanding, how I can say it's an ADR? B means not this medical fraternity. It should be reachable to the common person. Is there any regulations in the market? Market in sense, hospital, private or government hospitals? That's what I want to clarify.
See,
Thank you.
that is the whole reason why, conferences like this, we talk about reporting adverse events. The whole science of pharmacovigilance runs on adverse events, not on adverse drug reaction. So anything that happens, even without a causal association between the drug and the event, is an adverse event. Only when a physician assigns a causality to the event by the drug, it becomes an ADR. All these data that I showed is about adverse events. It may or may not be causally related to the drug. But that's where we are struggling as a industry, as a fraternity, to elicit awareness that anything that you believe, is happening to you after the intake of drug, you should report it to the pharmaceutical company. That's a long way to go to answer your question, especially in a country like ours.
Thank you for your question. Do we have any other question? Please raise your hand. Yes, sir. Please keep raising your hand. A volunteer can identify you then. Who has the question?
During your presentation, you described the US FDA publishing ADR report at their website. Is there Indian FDA, they are also publishing some ADR report, yearly basis?
For
we can know.
For the vaccines, I know they publish, but not for I'm not aware of anything in general other than vaccines.
Only except vaccine they are publishing. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Do we have any other question from the audience? Yes, please share the mic ahead. Sir, may I request you to please stand up so that the volunteer can identify quickly? Please quickly come to the front. Please state your name and organization.
Naveen Agrawal, Glenmark Life Sciences.
Hi.
My question, when a patient like 60, 70, 80-year-old taking multiple drugs, starting pantoprazole in the morning, then sumatriptan, then diabetic, and then in the end sleeping pill. So how in such conditions, and there are adverse drug reactions, those are happening evident. How to identify, and then again, whether there is a rule that certified physician has to certify that this is due to XYZ drug, because we have also faced earlier directly patient reporting adverse drug reaction without having any certification from a physician or a prescribed doctor.
So for the patient or the caregiver to report to the pharmaceutical company or to the government, there is no such rule that it has to be certified by a physician or a healthcare professional. Anyone can report it to the pharmaceutical manufacturer or the license owner. In the company, the PV team consists of physicians who then do the causality assessment before it is sent to the agency. So that is the onus lies on the pharmaceutical company and not the patient or the reporter of the adverse event.
So pharmaceutical company may ignore it because the patient is taking multiple drugs in a day.
I don't think we will ignore it. I don't think.
You actually don't know.
So there is a way to handle. So we will see the causality against each drug. But when you say ignore, that's not happening. We database the event, we database the case, we do go through a thorough causality analysis, and then within the prescribed timelines, each company, each agency has its own timeline. So depending on whether the event is serious, listed, unlisted, we have to report it to the agencies. So no company will ignore such a reported case.
Okay, do we challenge certain adverse drug reactions like, I am just speaking like a public, and we are not having that accessibility, like eye drops caused death in US due to salmonella. So such things, whether we challenge as a government, as a company, whether that is we participate in that investigation, is that any platform available?
So at the patient at large, public at large, I'm not sure if there is a platform where people at public at large can challenge. But at the company level, there is a close collaboration between PV, quality, manufacturing to assess whether, to your example, the eye drops leading to death. So there is a chain of investigations that happen at the back end before the report is submitted to the agency.
Okay, because sometimes we don't digest. We usually use any water of even river to flush our eyes, and that has everything, all the types of bacteria plus pathogens. So whether that really can cause a death, that is a curiosity in, because India's reputation when gets tarnished, then in such cases as a citizen, we never know what was the exact reason, whether it was real, not real, proven or not proven.
And that's why in the field of pharmacovigilance, we have a concept of conducting multiple follow-ups. So the more the questions we have, the more the questions are asked, and if the reporter or the patient is willing to answer and provide responses to all the questions, that helps us make a meaningful causal relation, whether the event happened because of the drug or not.
Thank you very much. We feel that we are at lower end, and when there are some drug syrup-related deaths which are proven, so by default, we are at lower end, and we may not challenge certain things. That also psychological and other impacts are there. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir, for your question. Do we have any other question? Please raise your hand. So may I request you to please stand up? Can we pass the mic?
Hello. Hi, sir. This is Venkatesh Deshmukh from Sun Pharma.
Hi.
So, a repetitive market complaint comes for lack of efficacy. When you tested this product at that point of time during the shelf life, the assay is found well within the limit. So, how pharmacovigilance team can have any standard or a benchmark to respond such type of queries? Because when we are testing or doing random sampling, product is passing well within the specification, but still the patient complaints are there for lack of efficacy. How do we can encourage that?
So lack of efficacy is a very big umbrella term. One part of it is doing a analysis and finding out the assay levels. The other part which we analyze is the patient's response. So how does the patient respond to the... So like I can give a short example of antibiotics. A wrong selection of an antibiotic against a wrong organism will anyways lead to a lack of effect. So this is not a lack of effect to that antibiotic, but an incorrect choice of the antibiotic by the pharmacist or the physician. So all these factors are taken care into what is, say, the reported term may be lack of efficacy, but it could be simply a non-response or a sub-therapeutic or suboptimal response by the patient. So all those angles are looked into when we assess a lack of efficacy complaint.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. Yes. Can we switch on the mic, please?
Okay, Rajiv from IPA. Thanks, Dr. Avinash, for this nice presentation. In your slides, you mentioned about when there is an adverse effect or if there is a possibility of a quality failure, then the company needs to recall the product from the market. And there's a categorization. Now, this categorization is to be done by the company or the regulatory agencies does that?
So it's a collaboration between the company and the agency. What the PV team does is assign some level, some confidence level where it might cause, it could cause, or it is unlikely to cause. But then depending on other conditions where, there could be acute market shortage, and then the agency, the interaction with the agency by the company may determine whether, acute recall will lead to acute shortage, and then the agency may approve that, okay, the point under consideration is not that serious enough to call recall of the whole that is available in the market. So there are multiple factors that are into play here.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Avinash, for answering all the questions. And thank you, audience, for being participative. Can we have a big round of applause for him?